Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 40th in his series Glimpses of Culture. Many books have been written on different schools of Indian miniature paintings. These have presented their beauty and styles in some detail. However, these medieval miniatures have largely been seen as disconnected from the painting traditions of ancient India. Perhaps the most important contribution to Indian art history of Professor Benoy K Behl was first to document the surviving and largely unseen mural paintings of ancient India. He then documented early manuscript paintings in museum collections in India and across the world. A seamless connection and evolution was established by him from ancient times to the medieval period, a continuous tradition of painting which had never been recognized before. The corpus of surviving Indian art is enormous. It covers 5,000 years of living history. It has been a daunting task for art historians to see the art of India in its perspective. Usually, fragments of this history have been looked at and studied in comparative isolation. That is where the single-handed, widespread documentation of Indian art by Professor Behl is invaluable. Through his vision and analysis, we are able to see each section of this great treasure in its wide perspective. He is the person who, for the first time, photographed the 5th century Buddhist paintings of Ajanta in their true colors and details. His book, The Ajanta Caves, is among the most widely read books on Indian art history in the world. He has been invited again in January to speak on Ajanta at the Jaipur Literature Festival in a joint session with William Dalrymple. His recent book on the art of India in 2 beautiful volumes is already in its 3rd print run. Today he takes us to the exquisite Buddhist and Jaina manuscript paintings which laid the foundations of the Indian miniature painting tradition. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Benoy K Behl will speak to us about roots in sacred art. I thank you for your attention and hand the floor over to Professor Behl.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure to be with all of you again. The deeply connected history of Indian painting is one of the least known subjects that there is. In 1991, when I presented the details and colors of the Ajanta paintings before the world, the leading art historians and art critics who had gathered at the cultural capitals of the world to see these had a unanimous response that surely Ajanta was among the finest art of humankind. But it was when later in 1991 that I photographed the previously unphotographed and 10th century paintings of the Brihadishwara temple at Tanjavur that there was yet another response. As an example, when I showed the Brihadishwara paintings to Dr. Milo C. Beach, who was then the director of the 2 American National Galleries of Asian Art, the Freer and Sackler Galleries, he responded to say he was an expert on, or he was a known expert on Indian art. He responded to say that I will have to revise my understanding of the history of Indian painting. When I asked him, Milo, why is that? He said that the paintings of Ajanta were known to the world, but they were regarded as a flash in the pan because paintings before Ajanta were not known, and paintings for at least 800 years after Ajanta were not well known. But now that he was seeing paintings of the end of the 10th century, which reflected the same technical virtuosity as the Ajanta paintings, he said that this meant that there was, in fact, a tradition of painting, a continuous tradition of painting in ancient India. I went on thereafter to photograph other 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th century mural paintings in India, and this ancient painting tradition was well established. However, people still wondered about the disconnect of styles from the ancient paintings to the late medieval miniature paintings of which they were aware. And that is where a study of the Buddhist and Jaina manuscript paintings comes in. That is where we see the evolution of style. In fact, I was alerted to these changes, to the development of the medieval idiom in Indian painting by the paintings, the wall paintings of Ellora. That is where uh, abstraction, linear forms, and these changes had begun to come in. In fact, the sculptures at Nalanda also showed this more dynamic attitude which was coming into the art. From the earlier, infinitely gentle paintings who just melted your spirit, and took you into another realm where you felt that you were becoming one with the gentleness, the compassion of all that there is. From there, the change which occurred is that the philosophy and its art began to move to a more intellectual level. The dynamism of the intellect came more into play. And this was reflected in the sharper angular features, in the bold use of colors, in the abstractions which began to come in the medieval period. And though I spotted them first in the mural paintings, very soon these were visible in the Jaina manuscript paintings. So, from the Buddhist manuscript paintings, which still followed much of the earlier style coming from Ajanta, to the developments which took place in the Jaina manuscript paintings, there was the medieval tradition which developed in India. So it was an evolution and not a disconnect from the ancient paintings to the late medieval miniature paintings of Rajasthan, etc., with whom we've all been very familiar. And it is this marvelous continuity of the art which needs that we must take a good look at the beautiful manuscript paintings. I had the good fortune to shoot masterpieces of these paintings in collections in India and across the world, whether it was the LD Institute in Ahmedabad, or whether it was the Riedberg Museum in Zurich, or the Brooklyn Museum of Art, or the Harvard University Museums. All of them very kindly contributed to offering their reserved collections and other paintings to be shot for the series of films which I made, 26 films on the paintings of India. And it is with great pleasure that I share with you the film today, which is on the Buddhist and Jaina manuscript paintings, a lesser known but very beautiful treasure of Indian art. My many thanks to India Habitat Center for this another opportunity to share this treasure of Indian culture and art with all of you. My many thanks to Doordarshan, who were so kind to patronize the making of these deeply researched films, films which were not meant to catch a general audience, but were in fact consisting of primary research, in-depth films. And it is Doordarshan that gave me the opportunity to share the history of Indian art with the people. These films were shown on the national channel of Doordarshan more than once and were followed up by many telecasts on DD Bharati. In fact, hundreds of school teachers all over the country, in remote parts of the country, were able to use these films to expose students to the history of Indian art, and it is indeed marvelous of Doordarshan. So, ladies and gentlemen, I share with you this film, and I request Sunil to please run this before us. Thank you so much.
Art is the reshaping of reality by man to present it in an understandable way. As the artist recreates the world around him, it is shaped by how he sees it and what he believes in. The Indian artist did not attempt to depict only the material reality around him. He wished to share the complete experience of the moment, not just the photographic presentation of the shapes around him. Beauty for the Indian artist has been a reflection of the glory of God. In fact, for the ancient artist, the experience of beauty, the ecstasy on seeing nature or art which is truly beautiful, has been considered as akin to Brahmanand or the final bliss. Join us on this journey into the heart of the Indian tradition of painting. Come with us to the gorge of the Vaghora river, where Ajanta was created, to the courts of the Mughals and the Deccani Sultans. Journey with us through the deserts of Rajasthan and the icy lands of Ladakh and Lahore Spiti. In the verdant south and in the gentle hills of the north, experience the compassionate view of life that is enshrined in Indian painting.
Man needs to believe in something. Life has so many questions and so much pain that he needs to look forward to something that is better and beyond. An understanding which makes sense out of the seeming confusion of existence. When he believes in something, there is peace within him. This is communicated in his works of art, which are the deepest expressions of his feelings. The ancient Indian treatise on painting, the Chitra Sutra of the Vishnu Dharmottara Puran, states that paintings which are made with an understanding of the harmony of life have a beneficial influence upon the onlooker. It is this deep understanding and vision of life which ancient Indian art shares with us.
The best art of the world carries this feeling, one of the sharing of harmony, even of love. The great art of Ajanta takes us to such an enchanted place, where the ceaseless turmoil of the world is at last still.
The figures painted by the artist are in the midst of the world, but their look, their attention is within. And when there is peace, within that, beauty and solace can be found. The task of painting envisaged in the ancient treatise of Indian art is to achieve that very aim. Beauty is, after all, a reflection of divinity that soothes the pain of mankind. No less than this was the avowed aim of the painter in ancient times. Art in ancient India was deeply connected to religious belief. The earliest surviving paintings in India are of the Buddhist faith. From the grand murals of Ajanta, we see art which enshrines the gentlest thoughts and the deepest feelings of compassion. Buddhism, which arose in the 6th century BC, was a great stream of compassion from which some of the most sublime art of the world was born. The art of Ajanta, with its graceful bodhisattvas, or the seekers of truth painted upon the walls, represents perhaps man's greatest achievement in the depiction of the life within. The life of the soul of man within his ephemeral body. With the development of Vajrayana Buddhism in the great universities of Nalanda and Vikramshila in eastern India, the art of Buddhism entered another exquisite phase. At these great centers of learning, the attributes of the Buddha were carefully analyzed and understood. Many deities were created who embody the qualities of the Buddha. The philosophy of Vajrayana offered its own path to the devotee to develop compassion and thus aspire towards Buddhahood. The worshipper identifies himself with a particular form of the Buddha until he becomes that very form. Paintings serve as visual aids in the process of identification and transformation. The worshipper concentrates on the deity and in the process loses himself, taking on instead all the qualities that the deity enshrines. Paintings were thus extremely important as they were an integral part of religious practice. In the first millennium, Eastern India was the great center of Buddhism in the world. Scholars and pilgrims constantly came here from all the countries of Asia. During the reign of the Palas, from the 8th to the 12th centuries, painted manuscripts were made in vast numbers in Eastern India. In the Vajrayana Buddhism of this period, the path to liberation was believed to be through the understanding and imbibing of the virtues of the Buddha. The Pragya Paramita was the most revered text of the Vajrayana Buddhists. These texts were written on seasoned palm leaves, and spaces were left by the scribe for the paintings. The paintings are depictions of the Buddha, Buddhist deities, and the Jatak tales of the previous lives of the Buddha. The book of the Pragya Paramita was conceived to be the transcendent body of the goddess, Pragya, or wisdom. The sacred text itself thus came to be worshipped and venerated as a goddess. This is a unique occurrence that a book came to be revered as a deity. The artist who painted the sacred deities within the book performed an act of devotion. The name of the patron who commissioned the making of these texts in order to gain merit is mentioned in the manuscripts. The scribe's name is also mentioned. He first inscribed the written word and left spaces which were then painted by the artist. However, the artist, true to the great Indian tradition, remains anonymous. For him it is enough that he fulfills his duty, his function in life, of painting, in a way only he knew how. Personal vanity or gains played no part in this. The artist was, in painting the images of deities, performing an act of the highest devotion. Since the paintings of the deities were believed to embody the very qualities of the deity depicted, great care was taken while painting them. The images in Buddhist art adhered to the strictest norms of iconography. The painter's role was more than just mere depiction. It is through these images that the details of iconography were maintained through the centuries. Not even the monks knew the complete details in the manner that was known to the painters. These paintings bring to us our only knowledge of many Buddhist deities about whom we do not have any written record. The paintings do not directly illustrate the text. They exist independently as sacred symbols with magical potency. Vajrayana Buddhist rules seem to have guided not only the depictions of deities, but also their placement in the text. The paintings are not spread throughout the text, but appear in the beginning, middle, and end. The paintings in the Buddhist illustrated manuscripts of the Pal period are extremely close to the great murals of Ajanta. The tradition seems to have come down directly from the cave walls onto these narrow palm leaves. The same harmonious blending of plastic and linear qualities is seen here as at Ajanta. Lines flow lyrically, defining the form that they contain. The artist's great skill is apparent in the handling of figures which lilt gracefully. Weight and volume are suggested by tonal variations in color modeling. These are not weighty, earthy beings. They have the serene and sublime beauty that only gods possess. As at Ajanta, the gentle essence of Buddhism is enshrined in the Pala paintings. These paintings take us to an enchanted place, far removed from the noise and clamor of the material world. A world of stillness, whose gentleness and beauty lifts our spirits and our thoughts. The lilting grace of these paintings reminds us that there is an end to the sorrow of the world. In the Pala period, the universities of Nalanda and Vikramshila were the great centers of learning. Their famed libraries had vast archives of revered texts, which attracted scholars from all over Asia. With the destruction of these universities by foreign invaders in the 12th century, Buddhist monks and teachers fled to Nepal and other Himalayan areas. By the end of the 13th century, the creation of art and monuments in North and East India was greatly affected. The art of manuscript painting seems to have disappeared at that time. In the meantime, this tradition had taken roots in the Himalayan areas. Here, protected by the tallest mountains of the world, the making of exquisite Buddhist paintings continued through the medieval period. Along with merchants and missionaries, many Buddhist painters also travelled to Myanmar. Here, thousands of great pagodas were being built by King Anirudh in the 11th and 12th centuries in Bagan. Exquisite mural paintings which are closely similar to the beautiful Pala manuscript paintings were made on the walls of these pagodas. Jainism flourished in India at the same time as Buddhism. Besides Buddhist paintings, the other great stream of paintings which flowed in India through many centuries was that of the Jains. A severe famine in the 5th century AD threatened to break the chain of oral transmission of Jain teachings. At this time, vast numbers of manuscripts were written to preserve and to continue the beliefs and the canons of the Jain faith. Large numbers of painted manuscripts continued to be made thereafter through the entire medieval period. Jainism is divided into two sects: the Digambar, sky-clad, and Shvetambar, white-clad. The large majority of illustrated texts were made by the Shvetambar sect. Since times immemorial, the Jain community has been known for its prosperity and trading activities. Jain merchants were amongst the most prosperous and wealthy in India. They were the great patrons of art and temple building. They generously sponsored the making of large numbers of painted manuscripts, as it was believed that they would gain merit by commissioning these sacred works. Early Jain manuscripts, unlike the Buddhist ones, generally illustrate the accompanying text. The Kalpa Sutra and Kalkacharya were the most popular manuscripts to be illustrated. The Kalpa Sutra describes the life of 4 important Tirthankars or Jain saints. The other popularly illustrated text, the Kalakacharya Katha, is the tale of Kalaka. He was a monk who sought the help of foreign rulers to combat the evil monarch of his land. Interestingly, the foreigners are depicted with narrow eyes and braided hair, quite like Mongols. Here we see Queen Trishala, who will give birth to Mahavir, the great Jain saint. The embryo of Mahavir was miraculously transferred into her womb. On that night she had 14 auspicious dreams. These dreams foretold the birth of Mahavir. We also see paintings depicting Harine Gameshi, who transferred the embryo from Devananda to Queen Trishala. Here we see Lord Indra in his heavenly court. It is he who had sent Harine Gameshi on this mission. In the 10th and 11th century manuscripts, we see both the naturalistic Pala style and the linear style of the Jains. Slowly, the linear tradition with its angular abstractions became the norm. By the end of the 13th century, all traces of Pala modelling, volume and weight had disappeared. The introduction of paper in the 14th century as the popular base for paintings led to changes in the style. Earlier, the compositions had been strictly horizontal, owing to the restrictive, narrow shape of the palm leaf. Now, the artist had a larger surface to work on. The palm leaf manuscripts were held between wooden covers and bound with string. The string holes that had been necessary in the palm leaves came to be painted onto the paper. These gradually became decorative motifs. Border decorations were the first pictorial elements in Jain manuscripts. Even after the introduction of human and animal figures in the manuscripts, the borders continued to provide the artist a space in which he was not bound by religious conventions. Here he was free to paint the world around him. Jain manuscripts offer us a detailed and colourful picture of contemporary life. Stylizations and conventions were developed and used extensively in the Jain paintings. Linear draftsmanship defines the forms. Colour is applied in flat washes. The stylized human figures with pointed noses and rounded chins resemble those at Ellora. The Jain manuscript paintings are lively and vibrant. With animated gestures and rhythmic movements, the figures possess a life of their own. The protruding eye, extending beyond the line of the face, adds to the energy in these paintings. The simple and abstracted forms of the figures are delineated with brisk and sure lines. There is a marvelous sense of design which is extremely modern in its appeal. The conventions of painting developed in the early period in these manuscripts continued right through the medieval age in Indian art. This style has come to be known as the Western Indian style of painting, perhaps because its beginnings are seen in the 9th century mural paintings of Ellora. In the early medieval period, with the fading of the classical style in Indian painting, the Western Indian style became dominant across all of India. We see the protruding further eye in paintings as diverse as those in the Buddhist monasteries of Ladakh and in the Hindu temples of the Vijayanagar Empire. From the Jain or Western Indian style of painting also emerged the style which came to be known as the Chaur Panchashika. This style was to become the basis of the schools of Rajasthani miniature paintings, which were to come in later centuries. The Jain and Buddhist traditions of painting are the roots from which many branches of Indian art developed. The styles travelled across the country and were taken beyond its borders by merchants, soldiers and travellers. The early art of the Jain and Buddhist traditions is among the finest art of mankind. These paintings transcend mere pictorial representation and bring to us a vision of the great harmony of the world. From the gentle and tender images of the parlour paintings to the lively and linear abstractions of the Jain manuscript paintings, we see two great streams in art. The great classic style, coming from the murals of Ajanta, and its transformation into the medieval idiom, which is the foundation of the schools of Indian paintings to come. These are some of the most beautiful flowers of Indian art, and their seeds developed into great traditions of painting in India and many countries of Asia.
My many thanks to Sujata Chatterji, who makes everything which I try to do possible, and makes it all so happy and so good. I believe that this film, this part of the subject of Indian painting, the Pala and the Buddhist and the Jaina manuscript paintings, should be one of the focus areas of the study of all who research Indian paintings. There is so much here to understand. It is these paintings which are the roots of the later miniature paintings to come. And as you saw, they are also the paintings that influenced so much art in places like Nepal and Myanmar and other places. As a matter of fact, even when I look at the paintings of the 20th century in India, I find that the Bengal school is influenced so much by these manuscript paintings. In fact, not just in India, but if I look at the greatest painter of Sri Lanka of the 20th century, George Keat, I find that he is immersed in the art of the Buddhist and Jaina uh, manuscript paintings. He is deeply influenced and uses the protruding further eye, he uses the sharp features, he uses the bright colors and the angular compositions, immensely influenced and reflects these traditions so well. And the pity is that most of the time there is not enough focus on this vast range of manuscript paintings of both these faiths. I'm deeply grateful to the many museums and so many people in India and around the world who helped so much to uh, make this shooting a reality. My thanks also to my crew who worked so hard along with me in the vast task of travel for 240 days and the documentation of so many paintings. Of course, it was unusual travel. We were on a shoestring budget. Doordarshan would never have anticipated that I would want to go and shoot in 14 countries and spend so much time abroad to do these shootings. So there were budgets were not really available for it. As a matter of fact, at the age of 45, I had never before slept or been in a hostel situation. And I and my crew, there we were in youth hostels because we could not, we had all the cooperation and the permissions from museums and we had a wonderful shooting going, but we did not have the budget for regular hotel accommodation. So that is what we did. And we were at the youth hostels. My crew told me that we were willing to sleep at the airport, but we must go to all the countries. We must do all the shooting which has been envisaged. And therefore, uh, thousands of masterpieces of miniatures and manuscript paintings all got documented to create the series of the paintings of India. And what a joyous experience it is to look at these manuscript paintings. There is so much in them which takes you far beyond day to day concerns. So much in these that transports you to a world of grace, where you lose yourself in realizing that which is beyond what you see around you. And then the transformation to see the gentle, tender paintings begin to change when you see the dynamism of the intellect coming in, and you see the sharp features suddenly coming in, you see the energy of the protruding further eye, and you see all this transmitted for later. So it's a vast tradition from ancient times through all these, through to the miniatures, and then later uh, the 20th century Indian painters drawing inspiration from all this and going further. It's a deeply connected tradition, and it's quite a wonderful experience to see it and to see its connections. And my thanks to Sunil for another excellent screening. Very, very nicely done. Thank you, Sunil.
I'll take this opportunity to tell us about our next screening, which is no, it's not in January. We are off in January, taking the month off. And we'll be back with you on 22nd of February, which is a Saturday once again, and at 6 p.m. once again. So please mark it in your calendars, 22nd February, Saturday, 6 p.m. We'd love to have all of you with us.
And ladies and gentlemen, it will be a great pleasure to meet you then in the new year. And from Sujata and myself, may I wish all of you a very happy new year to come. With my thanks again to Habitat Center for all this.